More interesting decisions coming down from the Devils this week, including defenseman Shimon Nemec, defenseman Seamus Casey, leaving a lot of head scratching for GM Tom Fitzgerald. I'm Ryan the Gosiker, your host here on Devils Digest, and we got a great show planned for you, as we always do. But first, I want to give you a chance to be one of our first subscribers to the channel. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and we'll get right into the show. Now, the Devils, last time we spoke, they were coming off this brutal 6-1 loss to Winnipeg at home in just what was a terrible, terrible game for them. They play the Flyers, and then they're at home Tuesday night to play Columbus in what is going to be a massive game because Columbus is the team that's chasing them right now, and it's not the only team that's chasing them, but one of. But the purpose of this video is to talk about the young defensemen on this team. And in particular, we're going to start with Seamus Casey. Now, this report came out that the Devils have sent him down to Utica, and it really makes for an interesting debate on what the Devils are doing and what GM Tom Fitzgerald is doing. I don't know how you watch Shimon Nemec's performance the other night and sit there and say, hey, you know what would be a great idea? Let's send down Seamus Casey to the AHL. Doesn't seem like a great idea. It really feels like the Devils are in a service time manipulation simulation right now. It feels like they just don't want that first year of Seamus Casey's contract to hit, and I believe that hits at a certain game marker. It feels like the Devils don't want to hit that mark, and if they do, they use a year of his contract. They don't want that, so seemingly they're putting him in the AHL, and that's the only reason I could think of, because the play of Shimon Nemec has not been good enough. It has not been good enough. And honestly, sure, Sheldon Keefe was talking about it the other night after the game. He's had some stretches this year where he's been good. But where is 2023, 2024 Shimon Nemec? Where is that guy? Now, that team stunk, obviously. They didn't make the playoffs last year. Where is that guy? Will the real Shimon Nemec please stand up? Because I can't find him. And I don't know where he went. I don't know what anybody did with him. Okay, just looking at his numbers. Okay, you're not expecting 1,000 points from this guy. But, I mean, look at that. 15 games, 0 goals, 1 assist, 1 point. And he's a minus when he's on the ice. He's got 1 hit on the year. I think the number of times he's been hit is like 20,000 times greater than the number of hits he's laid out. It certainly seems like it, and he just doesn't look like a guy that should be here right now. I think he's a great dude. I know the comments earlier in the year about, how many number 2 picks get stuck in the AHL this long, this, that, and the other thing. Well, when you make a comment like that, you better back it up, and you better be ready to go. So when you get your opportunity, you show them why they should have never put a number 2 pick in the AHL for another year. And guess what? He's come up here and shown you the exact opposite. He's shown you exactly why GM Tom Fitzgerald and the Devils have kept him down in the AHL. Because he still needs development, and he's not ready. And it's unfortunate for the Devils because they need it. They need it right now. And then you're going to tell me we're going to send Seamus Casey down? And by the way, this tweet is very interesting. They cannot send Shimon Nemec down to the AHL anymore this season. As you can read this tweet above, he will be with the big club for the final 18 games of the regular season, no matter what. And you can see the AHL communications tweet below it in the replies that the player has to be on the AHL roster at 3 p.m. Eastern time, which is the same time as the trade deadline, in order to be eligible to be sent down from the NHL at any time for the rest of the season. So if Shimon Nemec keeps playing the way he played against Winnipeg, the Devils can't send him down. They probably have to create like a fake injury or something. I don't know if teams do that. I know in baseball does that, where they fabricate injuries sometimes just to put guys on the injured list because they don't want them to play anymore. But what do you do with Shimon Nemec? I mean, how do you watch that game Saturday or Friday night, I should say? I get it. The game was after the trade deadline and this deadline. But man, I can't believe you would. It's much like baseball that options are valued, right? You have the option to send this guy down. Maybe you acquire somebody better in a trade, then you send somebody down. Options are valuable. And it's kind of the same thing here in hockey. Like, the ability to send him down and bring Seamus Casey up or bring Santeri Hitaka up, that's valuable to them, especially with the fact that they're basically auditioning these guys, except for Hitaka. They've kind of kept him down. But you're really auditioning these guys, and I think their trade value is going down by the day. I know eventually one, if not both of these guys are going to have to be moved. They're going to have to be moved. So what are we doing? Limiting the fact that Shimon Nemec, if he plays the way he played on Friday night against Winnipeg, how do you justify the ability to not be able to send him down? Because I'm telling you right now, we went over this tweet in the post-game reaction to the Jets game, but this quote is one of the hardest quotes I've seen a coach put on a player. And it's that player that played in the third period is in the wrong league. Okay? The player that played before that throughout the road trip can help us. I disagree about the before then, particularly in that game. He looked like he was asleep. Like, he looked like he was just sleepwalking through the whole game. No sense of urgency is something I've heard around some Devils Twitter. Is the lack of urgency is really what concerns you in terms of Shimon Nemec. So it's when are we going to see this transition into the guy he's supposed to be? And remember, if he plays crappy the rest of the year, his trade value is in the toilet. So you're really put in a difficult spot here if you're the Devils, because if he doesn't pick up his play, you can't send him down, and his trade value goes down. It's a very difficult pill to swallow if I'm the New Jersey Devils. And again, for a guy like Seamus Casey, it's very unfortunate. Seamus Casey is, to me, has looked good when he's been up here. Good, not great, right? He needs time to develop. He needs to continue to build and everything like that. But the guy has, I believe it's 4 goals in 9 games, 9 career games. I mean, give yourself a little offensive boost, okay? Especially with some of the additions they made that are really defensive, like Brian Dumoulin, who's a very defensive defenseman. We've talked about that before. What's an offensive defenseman and what's a defensive defenseman? Brian Dumoulin is a defensive defenseman extraordinaire in terms of, that's what he does well that has kept him in the NHL. So why not pair a guy like Seamus Casey, who's maybe a little bit more offensive-minded, with a guy like that, so potentially he could cover his rear end for when he needs it? I don't understand the idea of now not being able to send Shimon Nemec down. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I feel like this has service year manipulation written all over it. This screams baseball to me. We've seen this done with plenty of guys. Cody Bellinger, one who's on the Yankees, Pete Alonso, who's on the Mets. All guys who've had their service time manipulated at one point in their career. That is what this feels like the Devils are doing to Seamus Casey, because to me, there's no real other reason why he's not here, or potentially it's either service time manipulation. It's likely a combination of both. Service time manipulation, and maybe they want to protect his trade value, right? Because we talked about it. Now signing Johnathan Kovacevic for 5 years, that right-handed defenseman is pretty locked up for the Devils for at least the next 4 years, and a lot of money invested in that side. So you'd have to imagine either Nemec, or Casey is on the way out, or potentially both. So while they'll play Shimon Nemec and maybe they tank his trade value, they're not going to do the same thing with Seamus Casey and just keep alternating them to the point where neither one of them have trade value. I don't agree with it, okay, because you're in the middle of a playoff race. You need to put your best foot forward. And if Shimon Nemec continues to play the way he's playing, he's not the best foot forward for the New Jersey Devils. But now you can't send him down. So this is the pickle that the Devils have left themselves in, and it really feels like they have, at least on the back end of the roster and things like that, have waved the white flag on this season, which is rather unfortunate for a team that's currently sitting in a playoff spot within their own division. That's a head scratcher to me. I know, right? 13, and Nico, Hischier, Jesper, Bratt, Timo, Meier. I know they got to play better. Okay, they certainly have their blame to go around, but on the back end of this roster, it's number one, not good enough, and number two, now you're making decisions for Sheldon Keefe, right? I mean, what if Shimon Nemec plays the same way he played against Winnipeg the rest of the year? then how do you justify him being on the roster? Well, he can't go down to the AHL because you messed that up. You didn't transactionally take care of the paperwork in order for that to happen. So the Devils have left themselves in a pickle. The whole Hischier, Bratt, Meier blame chart thing, we're not going to do that right now. We want to focus on these young guys, especially in the defense. But, man, it has certainly been a head-scratching week if you're a Devils fan and a fan of GM Tom Fitzgerald. It's got to leave you shaking your head at least a little bit. And so, I don't know. Leave us a comment. What do you think? Where should the Devils go from here? Have they really tied themselves down, chained themselves to Shimon Nemec, at least for the rest of the year? Why do you think Seamus Casey isn't here? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Is it service time manipulation? Is it trying to hold up his trade value? Let me know in the comments. And again, I'm your host, Ryan the Goose Gosiker, here with you on Devils Digest. It's always a pleasure talking to you, chatting with you. And as the base bar says, thanks for watching. It's a lot of fun. Wherever you may be watching, listening, one or the other, both, doesn't matter to me. Just tune into Devils Digest. We got a lot of great content coming for you, especially the rest of the way. So everybody have a great day, and we'll catch you next time on Devils Digest.